time of excitement and endless possibilities. I'm Lisa Partridge, Director of College Counseling, and I have the pleasure to welcome 5 of my colleagues from colleges to Tilton tonight. They've agreed to review the college perspective on the importance of each of the components of an application, along with explaining types of admission programs such as early decision and early action. We will hear their thoughts on the parent role in this process and their take on how students use social media, as well as how the colleges use social media. Once you've had some time to ask questions about the admission process, the colleges will take time to answer individual questions about their respective schools, and you may approach them at these tables right here, which is kind of a little mini fair type of activity. First, we will begin with Rob McGann, Director of Admission at the University of New Hampshire, and his overview of the admission landscape you find yourselves entering. Rob?
Good evening, and thanks for having us here tonight. I'm really glad to be able to spend a few minutes with you this evening. As Ms. Partridge mentioned, my topic is to sort of give you a general overview of the landscape in admissions and higher education and more broadly. I'm going to I'll share relatively few broad macro level facts and figures, but really spend a lot of our time talking about how this process should engage you, the individual student. That's really the most important part of this process, who you are, what you want, what your hopes are. And it certainly is okay at this point in time not to be sure of that. A big part of this process is developing a better understanding of who you are and what you might hope to accomplish in the next couple of years. We're not asking you to plan out your life until you're age 40 or 45. We're just asking you to figure out what you want to do next year. And that's reasonable. And that's a reasonable expectation. So with that as context, there's a number of things that you'll hear a lot about as you go forward in this process. You hear about a lot of things changing in the world around us, a lot more competition, a lot less competition, more expensive, less expensive, all sorts of variables that you'll hear about. I'd encourage you not to really focus too much on those variables right now. The one variable that matters is it's you. And that's the one constant in this process over 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It's each year, there's a new group of students going through this process. They're new to it. They don't understand all the language possibly. They don't understand all the policies and procedures. But they learn about it along the way because they've got good guidance and good support. Both in the college counseling office here, in the classroom, at home with your parents and family and other significant adults in your life. And the key thing is to really learn to understand and listen and incorporate the information you're getting from these different sources to help you make good decisions about yourself. The reality about going to college is, in this college-going process where there's a lot of anxiety, is getting into college is a fairly easy thing to do, as long as you're using good common sense. Good common sense requires that you have a good understanding of who you are, and what you've done, what you're capable of. Now, I might have wanted to go to a school that required an A average when I was in high school, but I didn't have an A average. So I have to be realistic about who I am and what I can choose from. As long as you understand what those choices are in front of you, you're going to be successful and you're going to be happy. Because that's a very important goal in this process. Being happy where you go to college leads to a lot of very important, successful outcomes. And that's really what we're looking for in this process. We want you to have a successful outcome, both in the college application process, but also in the college career that you choose. We want you to be happy and successful because if you're happy and successful, you're going to take appropriate academic risks. You're going to extend yourselves in ways that you haven't really yet considered. You'll take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you at the college that you ultimately consider attending. So finding a place where you're going to be happy is going to be really one of the most important goals that you can strive for. The reason is that there's a great many choices out there for you to consider, and you'll be happy at a great many institutions. It's not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 institutions that are going to be well suited to who you are. Rather, there's going to be multiples of 3 and 4 that are going to be appropriate institutions for you. And as long as you enter into this process with that mindset, you won't be disappointed, you won't be frustrated, you won't be upset, because you're going to find a place where you'll be happy. Happy also means understanding again what your goals are, and that takes a bit of time to figure out. So one of the big challenges and the big responsibilities before you over the next 12 months is you spending time defining what it is that's important to you, what matters. And that could cover a range of different topics. It's academic, it's social, it's cultural, it's extracurricular, it's vocational. Any number of different goals are relatively important goals for you to identify and try to identify what institutions can best support you in those goals. And students can be happy at a great many institutions because they're resilient. They adapt well to their environment. And the other piece that also matters is that you're continuously changing. So if you think back to who you were in ninth grade and look at yourself now, can you recognize who you are today? There's probably some core of that element that's still there that identifies and defines who you are, but you've probably changed a lot. And if you look forward 4 or 5 years, you're going to continue to change a great deal as well. So you want to find a place or a college where you will have the capacity to grow and change and to develop new interests. And colleges are, I think, by definition, great places to accommodate that change, and they really encourage and support that change. And then finally, there's a lot of clutter in this process, and that's another challenge of the landscape that you have to really contend with as you go forth. There's going to be a lot of very well-meaning people, and sometimes some not so well-meaning people are going to try and give you advice. It's the well-meaning relative who wants to encourage you to think about college A, B, or C, or has a recommendation on what career really matters, what major is the best major to choose. It's nice to hear, but you're going to have to contextualize that information and put it in proper perspective. They're not the one going to college, you are. So you have to listen to what's important to you, and your counselors and your teachers can help you define what is going to be important. There's always another guidebook or another website out there that's going to try and pretend to suggest that they know what's best for you. Again, you have to contextualize the information in question, make sure you're not going down the wrong path by following the wrong advice. So your job is to really identify at this point in time somebody who's going to be a great advisor for you, a great sounding board for you, so you can make good decisions along the way. So a couple of things about applying to college and the admissions landscape. I'm going to just mention a couple of very quick things, and I'm not going to spend really any amount of time on it because I want to get to the key point here. And the extraneous factors that you have to consider is that there are fewer high school graduates in this country, particularly in this part of the north end of the country. There's generally a pretty constant rate of kids going on to college at your high school. It's close to 100%, but overall it's about 65%. It's easier to apply to college. Electronic applications make it very simple to apply to multiple schools. A common application, a coalition application, and so forth all allow easy access to apply to colleges. And then more applications are being submitted by a smaller number of students. All this are big macro level trends that maybe you want to spend some time with your college counselor discussing. But the key thing right now is not to focus on those macro trends, but to focus on your experience. Focus on what's more important to you. Think about your classroom responsibilities, think about your co-curricular interests, think about things you haven't done in high school that you wish you had, but you want to take the opportunity when you get to college to do new things that you wish you had done earlier, or take advantage of things that aren't available to you in a typical high school environment. This is what you should be spending your time thinking about. And doing that will allow you to put the whole process into proper context. It's about you, what your goals and expectations are for college. A couple of things to remember as you go into this process. There's a lot of conversation, particularly at the private boarding schools, about being at a quote-unquote more competitive, more selective colleges. You have to move away from that language. There's a lot of very, very good schools in this country that aren't as selective as you might think is the benchmark for selectivity, where you can get a great education. So part of this is shifting your orientation from looking at the inputs, what's the accept rate, what's the yield rate, what's the average SAT, the average GPA, and looking at what the outputs are. What happens to students when they're at the schools they choose to attend? How well do they graduate? What's their graduation rates? How many stay there to stay to graduation? How do they grow and how do they change during their college careers? Because that's typically a relationship between the students who go to school there and the kind of thoughtfulness that faculty and staff engage in to create good academic experiences for you while you're in college. So if you think about the inputs of selectivity, which is often a source of much attention for a lot of people, nationally about two-thirds of, more than two-thirds, about 80% of schools across the country accept more than two-thirds of their applicants. So it's really important to understand that. The highly selective schools in this country, and there's probably 50 to 100 of them, are still accepting less than 50% of their students. So it's important not to focus on just those highly selective institutions, because they're not the only institutions in this country that can provide you with a great education. And again, how you define great education is up to you, not me. I can't define that for you. You've got to work with your school counselors, your college counselors, your teachers to understand what defines great. If you can do that, you're going to be in a great position, and you'll look past some of the clutter in this landscape and make decisions that are good for you that you're going to be happy with. So again, it's really important, though, for the students who are really focused on these most highly selective institutions to be very realistic with yourself. These institutions say no to a great many wonderful, outstanding, incredibly talented individuals, not because they weren't talented enough, simply because they didn't have enough space. And it's really just a game of popularity for them. They're very popular institutions. They're not inherently better institutions. They're just very popular right now. And you can't get wrapped up in some of these admission statistics because it's going to really color your approach and your thinking about how to apply to college and where to apply to college. So don't be too wrapped up in those sorts of things. So some of the key questions you want to ask yourself as you go through this process are, what are the key outcomes that I want to have in my college career? You may not know all that right now, but you can begin thinking in broad terms about some of the things that are important to you. How do you want to change? What academic programs? What kind of experiences do you have? Do you want to study abroad? Do you want to do research? These are all the kinds of experiences you can think about that can help define what your experience is going to be in college and how good of an experience it might be. So finally, I want to mention about the selectivity issue is that there's about 3,000 plus baccalaureate institutions in this country. They all do something well, otherwise they wouldn't stay in business. Your challenge is to really sort through all those 3,000 institutions to figure out which of that subset matters to you. That requires a lot of work on your part starting now and working through the rest of your junior year into the summers after your junior year to figure out which schools are realistic for you, which schools are practical for you on a number of different levels. So keep in mind that there are many measures of quality, there's many measures of good experiences, and you've got to define that for yourself to make sure you have a good experience. Lastly, I want to say a couple words about financial aid. Financial aid seems like the last thing you want to talk about at the beginning of this process. Really, in reality, it's one of the first things you have to talk about. You really do need to have some very frank conversations with your college counselors, with your families, about what is reasonable for you, for your family finances. Going to college is a very expensive proposition. It's one of the best investments you can make throughout the course of your life. So it's something to be taken very seriously because there's real value to it. But it's also important not to make the mistake or the assumption that I have to spend an awful lot of money in order to get the best education. There's not always a correlation between high cost and quality. But you also have to be thinking about the longer-term issues. What is the impact of my college choice on my family's experience? What is the impact of my college choice as it relates to finance to me personally? How much debt am I going to have to take out? And if I have plans for graduate school, which I assume many of you do, what is the impact towards my graduate school plans? So these are conversations you can start having now to make sure that the choices you're making as a family, because money reflects values, it's a resource issue certainly, but it also reflects values. Not every family wants to borrow a lot of money. Not every family wants to commit as much money to an education as another family. So you have to have these conversations early on so that you know what the landscape is and you're making good choices for yourself. A couple things you can do right now about financial aid and understanding the cost of colleges is that every college in the country has what's called a net price calculator. This allows you with some very basic information, primarily the tax return from your most recent submission, to figure out what is my obligation going to be as a family towards paying the cost of attendance at a particular institution, how much debt am I going to have to take on to finance this education, and that can be very good information to have now as opposed to waiting until April of your senior year, just prior to May 1, where you have to make a final decision. So having this information up front can be very informative as to which schools you ultimately decide to apply to. So that's going to be a very important thing. And the last thing I'll mention before drawing my comments to a close is that it's also important to understand the financial aid landscape in this country as it impacts the admissions process. So you'll hear of things like need blind and need aware in the admissions process. You'll hear about meeting full demonstrated need and not meeting full demonstrated need. It's very important to understand these concepts because they are very significant to you as an individual and you as a family in understanding which schools are realistic and which are practical, again, understanding what the landscape is. So I'll draw my comments to a close then. I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us and to hopefully engage us with questions after the fact. This is an exciting process. It's important to relax and enjoy it. Don't succumb to the pressures of the world around you on this topic. Don't become consumed with comparisons. You're the only person who matters. What your next door neighbor or your best friend wants to do has no relevance to your choice. It's really important to think about that and make sure that you're going through this process with your best interest at heart. Now, the other important thing to acknowledge in this process is that you may not know what your best interests are. And that's where you have to rely on your counselors, your parents, your teachers, to give you some guidance and some structure and some support. With that support, you'll be successful. You'll be happy in the end. And that's what matters most, because if you're happy, you're going to do well academically, you're going to take advantage of the opportunities that every college wants you to take advantage of, and you'll end your college career in the position that you want to. With happiness, success, and have really a bright future for yourself with a lot of good choices ahead of you. So with that, I'll stop. Thanks.
So from the University of Hawaii. Yeah, no, not really. I told you I was going to pick a good one. Girl can dream at this time of year. I am one of the Associate Directors of Admission at Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and I am an alum of HWS. I have been charged with talking to all of you about early action and early decision, benefits for the students, benefits for the institution of both of those, as well as letters of recommendation. So, first question for all of you is, who is a student? How many of you are apprehensive or nervous about this process? Show of hands. Okay. Parents, how many of you are apprehensive, nervous about this process? All right. Yeah, see, you're all in the same boat. What you need to keep in mind is every single one of you needs to take the time to figure out which school is the best for you. Don't have it be a race. Okay, for some people, you're going to go to a school, you're going to visit there, and you're going to say, you know what, that's the school I love, keep visiting schools, I want to apply their early decision, early action. Sometimes students can do that. Sometimes there's more factors that come into play that you can't just make that determination so early on. Maybe it be financial aid, maybe it be, some sort of, extraneous reason that you can't do that. So, early action. Okay, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm getting emails now. We don't have early action at Hobart and William Smith, but I keep getting emails saying, oh yes, I applied to your school early action in November. And I'm like, don't have early action. So first and foremost, when you're looking at these schools, do your research and see, okay, what types of deadlines, what types of applications do you have? Many schools have an early action and a regular decision deadline. Some schools have 2 early decision deadlines and regular decision. There's a school that has an early action deadline, and if you're deferred from that, or you can apply early decision. So there's all different types of application deadlines. One thing to keep in mind is every single school in this country is different with the types of applications that they offer and how they treat those applications, okay? So first piece of advice, don't try to play a game, okay? Don't think, okay, this is the best school for me, this is my best chance of getting in, or I don't know if that's the school for me, but I'm going to apply then because it's my best chance of getting in. That's what I'm saying. Take the time to figure it out. So what is early action? Okay, there's 2 types of early action. Okay, there might be some variations other than that, but early action is a way for a student to apply to a college or university and find out fairly quickly if they're admitted, okay? The advantage of early action for students is you find out early, okay, which is fantastic because, you can say, okay, I got into college. Okay, it might not be the school you want to go to, but it gives you, that advantage to say, I have an option, okay? So you can figure that out. Sometimes it allows you to have a better chance of admission, which is always sometimes, a very good thing. So sometimes early action does that. A disadvantage of early action sometimes is that families will not receive a financial aid package until after possibly January 1st or something like that, when families can complete whatever financial materials the school asks for, whether it be the CSS profile or the FAFSA form. So sometimes that takes a little while. So, I always say sometimes it's much easier to be admitted into a school than pay for a school, okay? So it might be, okay, I was admitted into the school, and then you get a financial aid package in January, and all of a sudden, I was admitted into the school, but I can't afford it, okay? So there's some advantages in that way, okay? Another advantage to early action is, like I said, it is not binding, which means just because you're admitted does not mean that you are saying that you are attending that institution. You have until May 1st to make that determination, okay? Advantages to colleges with early action is we're going to kind of see, what the landscape is. If we get a lot of early action applications, we might think, okay, we're a hot school right now, okay? We're going to see the quality of applications, okay? And we're going to be able to predict what we might be receiving in regular decision, the quality that we might be receiving in regular decision for scholarships, okay? So it gives us a little earlier indication of what our class might look like. It also gives us an indication of where we might stand in the marketplace, okay? College admissions is a business, and all of us, are tasked with bringing in revenue to whatever institution we work for. So, all of us have budgets that we need to keep, within and a certain number of students. So it's always trying to, fill that happy number of not over-enrolling, not under-enrolling, and bringing in a certain amount of revenue, generating a certain amount of revenue. So we're going through those as well, okay? There's also another type of early action. It's called restrictive early action, okay? And if you see a restricted early action, What that means is that you can only apply to that one school early action. You can't apply to any other schools, whether it be early decision or early action, okay? So that is restrictive early action. So you need to kind of take a look at that and see what type of options there are, okay? But early action is not binding. It's a great opportunity to just kind of gauge how competitive you might be in the applicant pool at a lot of schools. So you can kind of shift your applications around. If you're not getting great news in early action, maybe you need to look at a different type of school. If you're getting really good news, maybe you can try some reach schools that you didn't necessarily think that you had the opportunity to possibly be admitted to, okay? So that's early action, okay? And then there's the other bear, that is early decision, okay? Early decision is binding, okay? Which means if you are admitted to a school early decision, it means that you are intending on withdrawing all other applications from other institutions and you will be attending that school. The only caveat is, and we don't like students to just pull out, is if you cannot afford to attend that school, so if a school does not meet your demonstrated need by the paperwork, okay? As my colleague was saying earlier, what your family feels your need is might be different than what the paperwork says, okay? We talked about the net price calculator earlier. Sometimes that is a great option to see what you may or might not qualify for, okay, in terms of need-based aid, possibly merit-based aid. We offer financial estimates at our institution. The net price calculator isn't as accurate for us. So know that the net price calculator isn't, okay, the net price calculator comes back and says, I'm gonna get $15,000 in grant aid and then loan and work study. That's the net price calculator saying that. That is not the financial aid office. So know that that is an estimate as to what you might receive as long as the information is correct, okay? But early decision, there's some advantages in a lot of ways. Sometimes it can give you a better chance of being admitted into a school, okay? Student athletes, I was a college soccer coach for many years. I loved when my student athletes applied early decision at the Division III level because we don't have national letters of intent. If you sign an early decision agreement and you submit an early decision application, you're admitted, that's basically our national letter of intent. It means you are enrolling, you will be going there. If you think about early decision and the chances of admission, and positive aspect of that is you have say 600 students that you're looking to recruit for a class, okay? And in early decision, none of those spots are taken up yet. And you have a much smaller pool of people that are applying for those spots. And you know that they want to be there, okay? You are their number one choice. So, there's going to be much more opportunity to be part of that class, okay? So, small pool, small number of people, okay? And then after early decision, for a school like ours, where maybe 40% of our class will come in early decision, okay, you have, we'll say 300 students, we'll say 50%, 300 students are already enrolled in early decision, and then in regular decision, you have tons of students applying, okay? So, tons of students applying, fewer spots, which means that the selectivity will probably increase, okay? So there are variances with that. I will say, don't ever apply early decision, the binding early decision somewhere, thinking that, okay, that's my best chance to be admitted, okay? Apply early decision somewhere if you have 10 schools that you're looking at, okay? And if you receive decisions from all 10 of those schools, you don't care what happens with 9 of those, but if you get into that one school, that's where you want to go, that's when you consider early decision, okay? Don't ever be rushed into a decision. I applied early decision when I was in college. It was a scary, scary proposition, but, I think, like I said, the important thing is taking the time to make your decision. So early action is not binding, okay? You have until May 1st to make your decision. Early decision is binding, which means you are going there. So there's the big difference. And like I said, take your time on both of those. The second part of my talk here with you are letters of recommendation, okay? How many of you have people outside of school that really love and care about you and know you well? Okay. How many of you think that they can talk about your academic achievement? Okay. Do you think they can talk about your academic achievement through, what you've said you've done in class and what your parents have said you've done in class? Is that, showing hands, how outside the classroom, is that how people think about your academic achievement? Okay, so sometimes you're like, maybe. So letters of recommendation. The best letters of recommendation and the best thing to think about when you're getting letters of recommendation, less is more. Okay, you don't want to water down your application with 6 letters of recommendation. Okay, if you have, 1 or 2 teacher letters of recommendation, teachers that taught you, okay, who can speak to you overcoming academic struggles. Sometimes some of my favorite teacher letters of recommendation are from classes that you didn't have as strong of a grade in, because they can speak to, okay, well, you know what, you came in and you really struggled with the subject matter in the beginning of the year, but this is what he did to overcome that. And this is what I see as his potential moving forward. Every college and university wants to enroll a student that has potential. Every college and university wants to enroll a student that they know can take responsibility for their own education, okay? We want students that can face adversity and overcome it. That is a huge skill, because once you get to college, you face a lot of adversity. Yes, you're in a boarding school, but you know what? You're going into a new environment, okay? You have a lot more freedom in college. So can you face adversity? Can you get a bad grade and know or not understand the subject matter and go in and use a resource, area for learning needs, or go and talk to your professors? So that's why we want teachers that can really speak to who you are as a student, what your potential is, which is very important. Also think about letters of recommendation if you're applying into a specific college within a university. So say you want to apply into an engineering school. My advice is to probably have a science or math teacher write one of your letters of recommendation, because you're going to be focusing primarily on that subject area. When I used to work for a school like that, it was actually required that you had a letter of recommendation from one of those advisors. So like I said, really look through the list of schools that you're going to be applying to and make sure you have the people that are pertinent to those specific applications, okay? And with letters of recommendation, outside letters of recommendation, which I was teaching about earlier, you have lots of people that love and care about you, okay? But like I said, less is more. If there's a person that, say, you had a community service experience, and it was a really important part of who you are in your journey as a person, as a student, and you really feel as though having that person, that leader, write on your behalf, then go ahead and do it, submit it. Some schools will allow outside recommendations, some won't, and that's why I'm saying see what the different schools will accept. But it's perfectly all right to do that, but like I said, just because you have 10 letters of recommendation doesn't mean that's going to make your application more successful, okay? It might water down those 2 or 3 that can really speak to who you are as a person, all right? And, I think, like I said, have those people know you. Have them be, have them help tell the story of your application. The most successful application in my mind is a story, okay? Where your Common App, your personal statement, your activities, they tell one story about, maybe you're trying to say you're creative, maybe you're trying to say you're a problem solver, maybe you're trying to say you want to go and be the next, nuclear engineer, okay? So that tells that. And then hopefully your council letters of recommendation will be able to reinforce some of those ideas. And then you see your transcripts and, trends in your transcript, course selection, seeing why you did some of those things. And then asking your teachers as well, here's what I'm trying to emphasize about who I am as a person, what my goals are moving forward, where I want, who I want to be. Can you emphasize that in the letter of recommendation? And it helps tell a story. An application that is complete and it's not, one thing all over, and it's not a very concrete, this is what this person is or who this person is and this is what they're going to do moving forward. Those applications that are stories are the most successful. So I guess in closing, application deadline, apply when you're ready to apply. Okay, that's the important thing. Don't get rushed into it. Early action can be fantastic because then you can know, okay, am I into certain schools? It'll give you a boost of confidence, okay? Or help you redirect, your focus to other schools if you're overreaching, or if you can reach a little higher, okay? Early decision, if you know 100% in your mind that's where you want to be, go for it, okay? But before going into early decision, know if a school is something that could be affordable to you, okay? So do an estimate, go on the net price calculator, speak with the financial aid office, okay? Talk about that. Letters of recommendation, less is more. And have those people that can speak to you, who you are as a learner, how you can overcome things, what your potential is, and what your character is. And I'm sure all of you will tell a great story, have fun with it. Don't worry about being apprehensive. I think all of us are apprehensive too, with the new admissions round and not knowing, what we're going to do, where we're going to go, who the students are going to be. So have fun with it. You're all going to find a great home. So good luck to you.
Good evening. How are you all doing? So far so good. We're almost halfway there. My name is Lexi Alm, and I am from Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. And this evening, I'm going to be speaking to you initially about the academic transcript review, which is kind of a meaty topic, and then influences of diversity in the admissions practice as well. The academic transcript review, among many parts of the application, is an extremely nuanced piece, depending on where you're applying. And so I want to emphasize for you, as my colleagues already have, that we are here for you. We are working in the field that we do for you specifically, and we would not have jobs without you. So please utilize us as resources, financial aid colleagues as well, as resources to make sure that you have all of the information for the specific schools that you are applying to, because I'm going to give you an overview here, but it is going to be nuanced from school to school, and we can give you more clarifying information individually on each of our schools if you just take the time to ask us. So that's the kind of preface of this piece. To start off here, I want to talk about the two biggest components of the academic transcript, the pieces that we're looking at. And one piece might be pretty obvious. I think that you would expect that we're looking at how you've done in your classes. So I know that for some schools that's going to be grades and a GPA that's already calculated for us. Sometimes that's going to be a little bit more abstract if we don't have a calculated GPA or we have a different grading scale. But the good thing is that we are given some fantastic information with your transcript. We're given a transcript, but we're also given a school profile form, which fills us in as professionals on what your school is doing. Where are you contextually in your high school? What does your high school have for course offerings, and where do you personally sit in the context of your class? So that form gives us a lot of necessary context when we're working with your transcript to figure out what the performance grading system that you have is working within. The other piece of the puzzle for us is what I refer to as program strength, or strength of curriculum, and that's the choices that you've made in high school with the help of the folks that advise you. So to start out with some GPA information here with some grades about the way that you've been doing in your classes. Some schools will take a reported GPA as given. If you don't have one, they will create one for you. But many will manipulate whatever is given to them to make for the most equitable way of viewing your specific school's grading system, so that all of our students are evaluated on the same scale. Some schools might have a threshold that they're looking for, a baseline expectation, but many schools have a holistic review process, which means that there are many factors involved in determining what will make the decision. GPA is just one of them, so it may not be a baseline threshold. However, many of us can give you sort of a window that we're working within and can give you a reasonable expectation of how you would fare in that piece of the process. Some GPAs from some schools have a weight applied to them. So for the academic rigor of the courses, a weighting scale is applied. And many of our institutions will remove that weighting because some schools don't calculate a GPA ahead of time, some schools don't weight the GPA, and weighting is not mandated from school to school. So there is a lot of diversity in what we see, which is exciting for us to go through, but it also means that we need to make sure that we're being the most fair that we possibly can be in the process to you. So as a result, a lot of us will have our own internal process for determining weight of your GPA or the rigor of your program. So we will often take into account AP courses, IB or honors coursework, as well as a high school's curriculum, especially if they're not offering the more traditional AP, IB, or honors designations. In addition to the program of study that you're taking and the GPA, some schools may be considering your SAT or ACT scores. So the standardized testing is probably something that's on a lot of your minds. Is that true? Who's excited to take their SAT or ACT? Yeah, none of you. Okay, great. So there's a lot of nuance in this piece as well. Here are some things that you can be kind of have in the back of your mind and some good questions to be asking when you're looking at schools. And depending on how those tests end up going for you, you can determine which of these questions is going to hold the most importance to you when you are going through the SAT and ACT process with the schools that you're applying to. So there's varying degrees of weight that these test scores will hold depending on where you're applying. Some schools will require them, and you will have to submit them to be an applicant at that school. Sometimes they have a baseline threshold, just like the GPA. Sometimes they'll have a sliding scale, and sometimes it's a combination of the scores and the GPA that they're looking for. Some schools will advertise that they are test optional, and I agree with a colleague who wrote a wonderful opinion piece on optional being a really awful word to use in the admissions practice here, that it really mucks up what you are expecting from school. So is it really optional? What is really optional? Am I going to be penalized if I don't submit something? So optional can mean a number of things. Sometimes schools will make scores optional, but they're required if you want merit scholarship. And sometimes schools will require additional information or a portfolio or additional essays if you want to not submit your test scores. And some schools don't require any additional information or work, and they'll consider you equally for both admission and for merit scholarships, regardless of whether or not you choose to submit your scores. So be asking, what kind of test optional policy is it, if there is a test optional policy? Be asking those questions because the nuances are really important there. Some of the most important factors here that schools will be looking for in this academic transcript piece is a strong curriculum. We want to see you setting challenges for yourself because ideally, if you're successful in this college search process, college will be harder than high school, right? That's kind of the idea that you're going for here. So we want to see that you know what harder feels like, that you're setting challenges for yourself every year, and that you know how to deal with harder. And when harder maybe is causing you some issues in the classroom, that you know how to find resources and utilize them to the best of your ability. So we want to see you setting those challenges for yourself, and that often means taking high-level courses where they're available to you, in places that make sense. That doesn't mean you have to take 42 AP courses in your high school career. Keep yourself sane as well. Another thing that we're looking for are grades that meet the general requirements for admission. This is something that your admissions counselor or regional rep can help to clarify for you if the numbers are not published, or if the information provided is a little bit too broad or a little bit confusing. You can always come to us and ask about, what are we really looking for in terms of a GPA? If there are bumps in the academic picture, we're looking for an explanation or an upward trend in your application. Cumulative GPAs are not the be-all, end-all at most places, but we do want to see what is it that we need to know? If there are red flags, you need to explain them to us on the additional information section, conveniently named, on the application. That's what the Common App calls it, but many applications will have an opportunity for you to disclose additional information about your application. And so telling us about a family situation or a health issue that may have come up. And we want to see that if there's a trajectory in one direction or the other, the one that we're looking for is an upward one towards the year that you're applying in. So those are all good things to